Listen, today when Mr. Kahn started the lesson, he started off with the table on the board. Tell me your thoughts about that.
I think the first thing I thought when I saw the table on the board is that it's good because we'll be able to like organize our ideas, because we had like so many different cases to read that it gets kind of jumbled sometimes. So I thought that it was really, really good because it helped like the students to get everything organized and see it, and it was like really, really easy for comparison also.
Okay. And what about, there were times when he was saying that he felt like he was moving too fast. Do you feel like he was moving too fast?
Sometimes I kind of did feel like he was moving too fast. Like, granted, he was using ideas that we pretty much knew, but every time he said, "I'm moving too fast," I was just thinking, wait, what did he even say just now? So it was kind of like, I think even him like saying that he was moving too fast like brought our awareness to it more, and so like it just made me forget what he said before, but I just referred to the chart, and that made it a little easy.
Okay, and there were quite a few examples. Did you feel there were enough examples or were too many examples? What were your thoughts about the examples?
I guess like I think with examples, it's better to use more than one, because that shows like that it's a more general idea, because if you just use one, then it's not really, it doesn't prove anything. I think that there's power in numbers when it comes to things like when you're learning when you're trying to grasp an idea. And I think with the I was kind of unsure with something, because I know that we were learning like the whole fire example. It was good, but then I was thinking of like, based on what I read last night about the Schenck case, I thought that that the Supreme Court was saying that it doesn't really, like, because it would interfere with like national security, that's the reason why we're not going to have it. So I was kind of like, with the graph, although it makes everything simpler, sometimes you need things to be explained to you. So I think like when you have just one word answer, sometimes it's hard because you're not really sure what exactly that means. Like the part that said help, not help, I was kind of confused about that a little bit. Like,
What could have made that better?
I think like if we understood more what the not help was about, like in the in the first column where he had like what everything was gonna mean. I can't remember what he put for that one, but I think he was saying like if there were other arguments, like if there are arguments that help or don't help, and it was just I think if we had that explained to us a little bit better, it would be a little bit easier to understand.
Okay. And what about the tactic that he uses, nose to desk? Tell me what your thoughts are about that.
Well, with nose to desk, I'm kind of ambivalent, because on one hand, I think it's good because like then we won't be influenced by other students' ideas. But then sometimes I feel like we're not 5. We don't need to go nose to desk. So it's kind of like, it depends, because I do think it helps sometimes, and it helps you to be more sure of your idea, because I know that when he asked the first question, like initially I was thinking with regard to the case like that we were discussing where he gave us the speech, do we think that the person who made the speech would be like convicted, or if they would be free to make the speech? At first I thought, of course they're going to be convicted. They have this teacher's address, like that doesn't even make sense. You have to be convicted. And then I was like, oh, changed my mind. So I guess that helps, because maybe if like we were all sitting up and he asked the question, I would have initially said that, and then I would have been like doubting in my mind, and then maybe I would have stayed with my first idea because the majority was staying with it, and I wasn't really like concrete about what I thought. So I think it's like effective.
Okay. Moving on to the mock trial example, how did you enjoy that, or what did you learn from it?
As far as the mock trial example is concerned, I really, really liked it, because I think students learn a lot better when they're interacting with each other. And we came into the group, and what I really liked is that my group that thought that the speech was protected, like we were the minority. It was only like 5 or 6 of us, and like the other groups had so many people. But when we came into the group, I know a couple people in the group were like, oh my gosh, we chose the wrong group, because some of the like star players in the class were on the other team. And I was like, no, we're not. Like, this is the team. Like, why do you believe this? And so like the exchange of ideas, it's like the whole idea of the marketplace of ideas. We all started spitting out reasons why we chose this side. So like I was saying, you know, for one thing, it's not concrete. Like the person didn't say, like the person who wrote the email, they didn't say when it was going to happen. Like they weren't being specific about it. So it was vague. So it was all like up for.
What questions do you have now?
Regarding the mock trial?
The lesson, or today's lesson, or yesterday's lesson, or anything like that, yeah.
Well, regarding today's lesson, I think that it's just like not really a question about what is protected and what's not protected, but just like, I guess I just felt that from what we learned today, you can see that like some, you might have an idea that's popular because more than half of our class was on one side, and so it was popular, but really when it comes to being a lawyer, you have to know how to prove your point, and sometimes it's a borderline idea, and you just have to know how to argue in your favor.
What would you have liked to learn more about?
I think I would have just preferred for us to debate the trial like maybe a little bit more. So like I think that group interaction is really good, and that's like it teaches students the most about like the real world, because ultimately you're not going to be working by yourself, you're going to be working with others. So it helps to like be able to accept other people's ideas and being willing to contribute your own ideas.
Okay. What should he change so that other students can understand?
I guess so that other students can understand, it might be helpful if Mr. Kahn like went a little bit slower with the lessons, but I feel like when it comes to things like that, it's going to hurt some and it's going to help others. So if he went slower, he's not challenging the people in the class who pick things up like this. But if he goes too fast, then he's not helping the kids who are just like sitting there doing nothing. And it's easy, like when a teacher's going fast with the lesson, it's really easy to just sit there and get dazed because all you start hearing is blah, 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 blah. So it's like, yeah. And you're like, yeah. And also I think that it would be like, I thought it was a really good method that he was like calling on students, because I think that makes students like accountable. Because a lot of times like when you're in a class, you'll have some students who are really like dedicated to the work and they'll have everything together, they're willing to contribute, but like sometimes you have kids who just kind of slide on by, like they're not really sure what's going on, but they're not voicing that they're not sure what's going on. So it's like, sometimes I like the whole call on students method, because it's gonna like make that student accountable. Maybe they didn't know the answer, so now they're gonna feel like, man, I really have to know it the next time so I don't have to feel embarrassed if I don't know it.
Okay. What do you think the most important thing students are going to get out of this lesson is?
I think the most important thing that students are going to get out of this lesson is that when it comes to life in general, really, it's not about how many people you have on your team. It's about how passionate you are about your ideas and how willing you are to commit to it. Because like I said with the example of like the amount of students that were on each side, the smaller group, I think that we were like, after the shock of realizing that we didn't have the students who were usually considered the ones who are going to get that point. Oh, I'm sorry. Like usually you have the like, even though we didn't have the students that were willing to drive home the points, like, and honestly, you can't underestimate people, because you don't know what a person in your group is going to bring at any given moment in time. So I think that it's just learning that there's power in numbers, but there's more strength in like purpose, like knowing what your purpose is and being willing to commit to it.
What do you think Mr. Kahn was trying to teach today?
I think Mr. Kahn was really trying to like teach us that when it comes to free speech, sometimes there really is a fine line. And a lot of times when he gives us cases and we have to choose which side we're going to be on, he makes sure that it's one of those borderline cases. Because if he said something like, oh, this person sent out an email saying that he's going to kill 5 students at his school the next day at 8 a.m. Like, there's no room for discussion. So sometimes conflict or like just difference of ideas, like that calls for the best discussions.
Okay. And my last question to you is, what would you change about this unit? If you could change anything about it, what would you change?
The unit in general?
Yeah.
I would have to say that, like, I don't know that I would change anything, to be honest. Like, do you mean like with regard to his teaching style, or do you mean like with the actual content of what we're learning?
However you choose to answer, you could address both.
Okay. Well, I think that like with Mr. Kahn's teaching style, it's really important that he's able to like realize that all kids in his class are not going to be on the same level, so he has to kind of strike a balance. And I think one thing that he does that I really, really like is that in the beginning of class, I was thinking, oh man, aren't we gonna get into this, like get excited and start really doing stuff? Because I'm the kind of student who likes to be really active with what I'm doing. And when he was talking, I was thinking, oh man, like yeah, we're not gonna be able to like debate or anything. But what I liked is that he did strike a balance. At the beginning of the class, he was like not asking very specific questions, but he was really like shooting out ideas, or he would ask a question and then he'd answer it himself. But towards the end of the class, he kind of switched it, and it's like, I was teaching, I was kind of lecturing with a little bit of participation, but now I want you guys to interact with each other, and you guys have to come up with your own ideas. I'm not going to tell you what to say, I'm not going to tell you what to think, and this is what you're, like, that's how you show what you can bring to, like, the classroom and the environment.
Fantastic. Thank you.